Every programmer has to start learning how to code somehow, and there are many people out there that just don't or did not have the possibility to do so, including me. Even though you have lots of possibilities to learn coding online today, there are still many people that just don't know how to get started. They watch a few YouTube videos and try to follow along some tutorials on coding, but don't really learn it that way, and maybe even stop trying to code. This video excludes any paid learning methods, because besides from the cost perspective, you also just don't need them. By the way, the single steps in this video are marked in the description, so you can just skip steps if you want. Just for you to get a rough idea what's happening in this video, there are all the steps I am going through now. The first step is choosing your first coding language, which is probably the most important step. Second step is download and install everything necessary, which you maybe already can combine with the next step, which is watch videos, for example YouTube videos, on the basics of your programming language. The next step will be to choose an application you just want to code and start using YouTube videos and Googling wisely to learn it or to just do it. And I will show you how to exactly do that later, which is already the last and fifth step, going through an example. So first of all, you have to choose a programming language, which is pretty difficult due to the fact that every code looks complicated to you as a beginner. But I can give you a list of the most common and, in my opinion, easy to learn programming languages. My favorite programming language ever still is Java. It's pretty easy to learn and you can do pretty much anything with it. From creating a game to any graphical user interface based application, for example. My next recommendation would be C#, which is pretty similar to Java, but still slightly different. If your aim is to make crazy games in Unity, for example, this will be your go-to programming language. What you definitely can't forget is Python, which is more different from other programming language, but still very popular due to its very simple syntax. There are a lot more programming languages out there, and which one you choose also depends on the purpose of your application. If you want to make apps for iOS, you have to learn Swift. For Android Studio, you would choose Java, or for websites, for example, HTML, CSS and even JavaScript. If you pick the programming language you want to learn, you have to download the tools you need. For example, Eclipse would be a good and free IDE. You basically can combine this step with the next one, which is watching 1 or 2 YouTube videos about your programming language. In most of the videos, the creators of the videos also show how to install and set up everything you need for your specific programming language, and with that you can start learning the basics and also follow along a little bit. For the next step, it's very important that you don't set too high goals for your first 1 or 2 programs. Generally, I would say that you shouldn't think about a graphical user interface in your first tries, because you have to learn and deepen the basics first. So there are some examples for first coding challenges. I mean, the basic everyone uses is the Hello World program, which you might already heard of. Things like small calculators using your command lines, no GUI, simplified scenarios of the real world like creating a car with its single components, or a house, etc. related to object-oriented programming. I really learned coding that way. I wanted or had to create a certain program. For example, my first Android app. I had to implement a shopping list in Android Studio. So this only was a part of the app, but that doesn't matter right now. So what I did really was Googling random things about shopping lists in Android Studio. So I went on YouTube, watched a tutorial and copied the code of it, which I started modifying to know what piece of code does what. I also just copied and pasted code from sites like Stack Overflow, and suddenly my code worked. The more problems you get, the better you learn how to solve them. And at a certain point you don't have to look everything up on Google anymore. Or you just Google one single term, find something, integrate it, and just in a few seconds your function is working. When you have new challenges, you get to know basically everything you have to know, and what's very important is to know how to look things up on the internet. So I just want to go through a simple example with you. We are going to code a very simple calculator without a GUI. Alright, I already opened up a new project in IntelliJ and for sure Atch. So what we are going to do now is just create a new Java class, which I'm going to call main, or you can call it calculator, or whatever you want to. Calculator, yes, right, okay. So The first thing we are going to look up is how to be able to type in some numbers into the command line. So we will type in Java console, input. How to read input from console. So as you can see, there are 3 different methods to do that. And we are going to choose just, I don't know, the third one, for example. As you can see, we have a buffered reader, which is an object of the class buffered reader. We create a new buffered reader, which reads the system input from the input stream reader. And he then gets the input into a string with a br.readLine. So we are basically doing the same, so just create a new method, in this case the main method, because we want to start the program, obviously. I hope you know what public static void, yeah, I forgot about the main, I'm fucking retard. Alright, so we are going to create a new buffered reader as right here. Okay, so just buffered reader, no. Buffered reader, br equals new buffered reader, just as it says right here. And in here we say new input stream reader with system.in. Alright. So now what we're going to do is create a new string. Let's call it typed in, for example. Typed in equals br dot, and he says read line. We will need an exception around that. Okay, so what happens if we start it? So in this case nothing really happens, and if I just enter something like, I don't know, you see that it's green already, that's for an input, and if I hit enter, yeah, nothing really happens. What I can do now is just print our typed in, and if I run it again, you can see that it outputs exactly the same thing which I input. So what we're going to do now is just system out println and then type in the first number. So if I start it now, then he says import the first, type the first number. Yeah, let's say 0. Okay, it takes the 0. We need to save this in an integer, obviously, because we want to add those later on. Our next rule search is Java string to integer. Convert string to integer. And there's already a method called parseInt. And he says integer I equals integer.parseInt with 200. And yeah, for an example, oh yeah, there you see it. So we have a string s 200. He just takes the s as an input for parseInt. So what we are going to do now is create an integer first num as an example, because it's our first input number, and we say, as it says here, integer.parseInt, and we say typed in. Yeah, we can just print our first num, and 1, he prints 1. And if we enter something else, we get an exception. So now we basically need our second number. So let's say type in the second number, and then we take another input. So now what we're going to do is not do this in 2 steps. So we're going to do this in 1 step, just create a new integer. Second num equals integer.parseInt, and in here we just say the same thing which this string contains. So we say br.readLine. Okay, then we can also print that one. And now we will just print the result of, and then we give out our numbers again. The result of first num plus and then secnum, then equals, or we could just say equals, and then we say firstnum plus secnum. So let's try that out now. 1 plus 2 equals not 12. So now it works. As you can see, I had an error first, or a bug, where it just, added those two and not added the numbers. So that's it for this video. I hope you did enjoy it and I hope I could help you with that. And if that's the case, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe and follow me on Instagram, where you get some daily insights of my very fucking boring life. And yeah, see you guys next time.